Can you play all these 10 intermediate level guitar skills? This is a quick review of 10 things that we're doing in our, what I'm calling intermediate 1 level of guitar lessons on our Patreon group. Let's see if you know all 10 of these, and if you are in a Patreon group, that means you're ready for intermediate 2. But let's go. Skill number 1 is basic blues double stops in easy shape. So what do I mean by that? Let's say we're in B minor. I got a B minor chord here. Basic blues double stops is like visualizing easy shape and playing these kinds of simple double stops, some of which are just taken from the pentatonic shape, and honestly some of them are not. But it doesn't really matter. Maybe you know where the root is. Oh, these are so common in rock songs and from AC/DC. It's not just blues, right? So we got to be able to find those quickly. And then when we're playing songs that have them, we can play them easily, or we could use them in our own improvisations. Skill number 2 is to do, sometimes I call these kind of the Jimi Hendrix hammer-ons. These are double stop hammer-ons, and maybe even just combine those with a lick. So for example, it might be like, that does instantly sound like Jimi Hendrix, doesn't it? And to be able to play them or add them to your own soloing or rhythm guitar playing, it's such a good style, right? It adds a lot of interest to, rhythm guitar playing, or even just helps break up a lot of single note soloing. Very useful. Number 3 is 6's double stops from any root in major keys. So let's take, say, a D note. I got a D note here up at the 10th fret. And I want to be able to play 6's whenever I see those roots. 6's are double stops separated out a sixth apart. So that's the 6's there. If I play a D chord, just to hear the harmonic context of that, that's my root, right? They are great licks to have, whether we're playing rhythm guitar, and we want to be able to find them wherever we might be on the fretboard. Maybe I'm down here in open position. I need to know, well, there's a D right there on the 3rd fret of the B string, and therefore, that's my 3rd 6's right there, right? We can connect them whenever we see them. Or we can move them to any chord we want. A chord. How do I know that's for A? Because that's an A right there, 10th fret of the B string, and 5th fret of the high E is there. And the 4th skill is being able to do that also in minor. That is quite useful because sometimes we want to have a similar kind of double stop sound when we're on a minor chord or in a minor key. So here's my B minor chord. That's a minor stop right there, right? Because I have B, and then I have the minor 3rd of B underneath there, right? And the formation of the lick is different because we're going to go minor interval, major interval, right? So we got to remember that when we're doing major, which was what? Major was D. D is there, and so it's this shape first, right? Or if we're doing minor, it's the minor shape first. That, right? The formation is different, and we can just memorize that. It's quite easy. Then all we have to do is just find that root, and we gotta know, am I doing major and minor, and then just play the shapes that we need. And of course, they work on B string root as well, right? So there at the 12th fret of the B string is a B, of course it is. So it also works there. Now, number 5 is a big one, and that is to understand common interval shapes on the fretboard. This is a little more challenging, and especially for a lot of students, it can sometimes seem like, why am I bothering to do this? This seems so academic. But actually, in the long run, we see how useful this kind of thing is. So in the tabs there, I've got, what do I got? I got a D, and then I got an interval there. That's an octave. Probably a lot of you know octave shapes already. But what about fifths? There's a fifth. It's really just a power chord, right? But it's useful to know. Now we know whenever we're in with a root, it's D in this case, but whenever our root is on the low string, the fifth of the key is always right there. Or let's go more interesting here. What about a major third? That's always a major third shape. So I can target it. Ooh, see how beautiful that major third sounds? And so I know where it is. I didn't have to think that the major third of D is F sharp. It doesn't really matter. I know where it is. That's more important, because if I was in a weird key, it's not that weird, but let's say I was in the key of E flat. I don't quickly know what the major third of E flat is. I just know where it is. That's what's more important. So we got major thirds. But what about a major third up an octave? That's also useful, right? What if I want to play, say, a bluesy lick, but I want to land on the major third? Ooh, there it is. I just know where it is, right? Sounds sweet. Major thirds give us that sweet sound. Or minor third. Minor third there. That's minor third up an octave, right? The original one, the original root is there. So I know if I want that dark minor sound, there it is. I can hear that if I played a D minor chord. That's where that will be, right? Or what about a fifth up an octave? There. Fifths always sound good. They always sound open. They always sound kind of unfinished on purpose, though, right? So if I go back to D major, ooh, that sounds cool. It sounds like I want to keep going. It sounds like another phrase is just about to come. Maybe down to a major third. I don't know. We'll see. And then, of course, up an octave, 2 octaves up. And we can find all those tones basically just by memorizing the shape. They're all in this bar chord, by the way. This is a D major bar chord, right? Here's the octave shape. Here's the fifth. Here's, major third. That one is not in that chord, true. But we can just memorize where that one is. This one up here, major third up an octave, is in the chord. There. And this one, major fifth up an octave, is also in that chord. And this, 2 octaves up, of course, is also in that chord. We could do it from a different position of the fretboard. Say we're here on this D major chord here. There's my root, right? There's my octave. Here's my fifth. Here's my major third. Now, it's a little different because the B string changes things, right? That's major third up an octave, which means that's minor third up an octave. We can see that inside just this D minor bar chord. We can see there's the minor third. Ooh, we can hear how dark that sounds as opposed to the major third there, right? And then the fifth up an octave. So now we know where everything is wherever we need it. That's the major third there. Whatever we need, whenever we want it. Now, number 6 is have a basic understanding of what Sus4 chords are and basically just how to find them on the fretboard. And this is really leading to a much bigger topic of extended chords and many different versions of those. But I start with Sus4 chords because they're so common in so many songs, and so we might as well just start there. But basically, you've probably played one of these before. There's a standard D open chord, right? And putting your pinky down here gives us the D Sus4. But there's lots of places to play these D Sus4s, and again, we're going to see them in lots of songs. Here's the same D Sus4, but as a bar chord, right? That's my standard D bar chord, and that's my D Sus4 chord. Remember when we said that the interval here was a major third up an octave? Well, what is a Sus4? A Sus4 is just taking the major third and moving it up 1/2 step, 1 fret, to the 4. Again, you can start to see when we can visualize things on the fretboard better, it's so easy just to find what we need. Here's another example. Remember we said up here, well, take this big D major bar chord first. Remember we said that was a major third, and therefore, wouldn't that be the sus4, right? Right there. Let's take the big D bar chord, and we're gonna change it so that it has that sus4 chord. It's kind of hard to play this one. It's actually quite squishy, isn't it? It's a little hard way up here at the 10th fret, but it does work. Maybe we take some more advanced shapes. This is maybe a little bit of a higher level, but it doesn't matter. Let's do it right now. There's a sus4, right? We had this D bar chord, and we moved the 3rd up, but we don't need to hold the entire D bar chord. We could just hold a little piece of it. And there's D sus4. We could move that anywhere. That could become a G. G sus4, A sus4, whatever we want. Or we could take this little guy, call it a triad, but it just comes from that D chord again, right? And remember where that sus4 was? Because the major third was there, and the sus4 is there. So those are so useful. Again, it's nice to know these things and not just be able to play them, but understand them. That way, when you're learning other people's songs and you see these things, you can play them so quickly because you just go, oh yeah, that's the sus4 thing. Or if you're jamming with friends or jamming along to a jam track, you can add sus4 when you feel like it. You can start to make your guitar playing sound more like you when you have more options to choose. Let's do step 7, and that is you should be starting to be able to hear chord changes. Now, you'll notice that I said starting to be able to hear chord changes because I think that this is a skill that it takes a long time to be able to do well, and it just takes a lot of practice, it takes a lot of playing, and it takes a lot of time thinking about the chord changes while you're playing. So usually what I do here is I just start with a basic chord progression like 1, 4, and 5, right? So if we are in the key of D, D is 1, and G is 4, and A is 5. And we start to be able to hear definitely the home chord, right? In relation to everything else. It always seems like it's going home, but we start to be able to hear the 4 chord as a slight departure. Sometimes I describe it as like you're opening up the door and looking outside. Maybe you're checking the weather outside. But it feels like maybe, you're going to shut the door because it's raining or something. You don't quite want to go outside. And then the 5 chord has the most, it's like dissonance, but it's not that dissonant. But it's like it wants to go home, right? So that's the A chord. And we can feel that that's trying to propel us back home. And when we get home, it's like a kind of a cliche. Move back to home. And once we have this kind of associations with the sounds of those harmonies, man, we can learn songs so quickly because we can start to hear, oh, that goes to the 4 chord there. Oh, that goes to the 5 chord there. Oh, it's going back to the 1 chord there. And not only that, but also if we're improvising, oh my God, we can memorize songs so much better that way, right? But if we're improvising, then we can start to hear the chord changes and we can solo over the chord changes. But you do notice that what I said there on that list is I said starting to be able to hear chord changes, like 1, 4, 5. Because indeed, it's a real challenge. Here's an example of why it's challenging. This really messes a lot of students up. So let's say I take those same chords, D, G, and A. But if I play them in a different place, it's going to sound different. If I play them back here again, you'll notice that we have 1 goes down to G, goes down to the 4 chord and back up to the D. But it's not always like that, right? If I'm up here, D, it's going to sound like it's going up to the 4 chord. And so a lot of times what students do is they start to memorize, oh, 4 chord sounds like it's going down, and that's not accurate. It depends on where we play it, right? If I play 1, 4, 5 here, it has a certain sound, but if I play 1, 4, 5 up here, it sounds quite different, right? I'm going up to the 4. And then I happen to choose this way, so I happen to go way down to 5 and back up to 1. So it's really challenging. It's more about the harmonic change than it is about going up and down. But believe me, over time, if you can get good at hearing even basic chord changes like 1, 4, 5, it's gonna completely change your ability to play guitar and just play music and understand music better. Number 8 is start to visualize chord shapes when soloing to find target notes. So that goes back to what we were talking about intervals. We were saying before, let's say I'm up here on this D chord, and let's say I want to target a certain note. We memorized, or we will memorize, where some of these significant intervals are. And we can just see inside the chord as well. So rather than always thinking about scale shapes when we're soloing, or even playing other people's music, sometimes we can imagine that the guitar player who played this song, Hotel California, whatever it is, that you can see, oh, you know what? They weren't thinking scale at that moment. They were clearly just thinking about a chord shape. And we can see that because that's how they're breaking out of the pentatonic shapes. So when we're playing pentatonic shapes all the time, it's so much noodly. When we can start to see intervals or chord shapes while we're soloing or learning other people's songs, it's very different. It's very different, and it is so fun because it allows us to sound so much more connected to the song underneath. So I have an example here, right? So it goes like, that's just a big D chord, just to give us the context here. And what interval is that? That's in the chord, right? We can see the chord there. It's the 5th, and it's gonna ring really well against that D chord because it's in there, as will that one. So sometimes think scale shape, but sometimes think chord. And that allows us to target notes of that chord, of that moment in the song, right? We also have to be able to start hearing those chord changes to know, oh, this song's on a D chord right now, so I'm going to envision a D chord, and I'm going to land my lick on that note. So we got 2 more, and number 9 is you can start to target the 5th or other chord tones to end an improvised lick. And so we actually did just target a 5th, but it could be, say, the 5th of the 4 chord, or the 3rd of the 4 chord, or the root of the 5 chord, which would be the 5th again, right? Or the 3rd of the 5 chord, or whatever. And so you start to experiment by thinking, okay, what is the current chord, and what is a cool target note for that chord? We can use interval shapes, but we can also just use chord shapes and visualize. We don't even have to think that hard about it. Any of the notes of that chord shape are going to sound good to end a lick with. So let's take this example here. Here's a D chord, and I'm going to visualize here. In this D chord, I got my root, right? And I got my 5th. Now I'm going to play some D major pentatonic, and I'm going to target that note there. That is a 5th as well of D. We said that's the 5th there, right? It's in the chord. And so I'm playing my major pentatonic, but I'm thinking, oh, I want something interesting on that D chord there. It sounds cool, right? It sounds different ending on that 5th. It has a certain personality as opposed to ending on the major 3rd or the root. The root has such finality, the 3rd has such character. The 5th kind of says, there's something else coming in a second. So let's do the last one, and that is number 10. You can add the 2, sometimes known as the 9, back into pentatonic easy shape. This is one of my favorite moves, and it's really quite simple. So one of the issues with pentatonic is that it's only 5 notes. I mean, it's partly one of the joys of pentatonic. That's why pentatonic is so useful. It can fit over so many different situations. But because it's only 5 notes, we're missing out on some of the character that we could have if we want something more moody, say. So here's a big B minor chord, right? And if I think about, what's the 2? If I think about pentatonic, that's the root. And in pentatonic, the next note would be here, right? But that's a minor 3rd. Pentatonic goes root, minor third, minor pentatonic goes root, minor third. But there's a 2, right? There's a 1, 2. And so the 2's here. And just hear how moody that sounds. Ooh, it's so moody. I added the other one in there too. I couldn't help it. That's also the 2. Now, why did I say the 2 or the 9? Because if you think root 2, of course that's 2. But if you go all the way up an octave again, root 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 is a 2 again. So it's kind of the same thing. A 2 is a 9 up an octave. But it's such a colorful tone in minor. We love it. And there it is as well. You just memorize where it is. I mean, the easiest one to memorize is that one because we know that's the root. So therefore, that's the 2 or the 9, right? What a cool chord it is. Okay, so on our Patreon this week, we're gonna put each of these skills together into one sort of workout, I like to call them. It sounds like this. That combines all the skills that we just talked about, and you can get the tabs for that on our Patreon this week, plus very detailed lessons on how to do all those different techniques that we talked about here. So my name is Blue Morris, and I teach guitar lessons right here in Vancouver on Patreon and YouTube, and we're taking a holiday next week, so I'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks a lot, everyone.